So I'd like to welcome everyone to the Nurses Station. I'm LaWanna Brown, a faculty member here at Regis, and I have a very special guest with me this morning, and it is Daniella Topol. So welcome, Daniella,
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
and tell us a little bit about what you do.
So right now I am an artistic director of a theater company off Broadway called Rattlestick, and I am pre-nursing. So I am in the midst of volunteering at Brooklyn Methodist Hospital, and I am steeped in my prerequisite courses and in the midst of nursing, accelerated nursing application
All
programs.
right. Well, that is exciting. And for many who will be watching this, they are also in nursing school and mostly nurses, which is great. So I have to tell you that when we read this story, I was like, okay, artistic director of, an off-Broadway theater and now nursing. So kind of talk to me about how that came about. First of all, have you always loved the theater and been involved in the theater? And then kind of what that segue was for you.
Yeah, I've always loved the theater. I love people. I love understanding how people work. And I felt like theater has been a passport into being in such intense and emotional places of transformation and discovery and change and catharsis. So that's been my career for 25 years. Um, and then there was sort of personal and professional reasons that kind of led me into a career shift. So on a personal front, I have been pregnant 5 times and I have one child. And so I have a beautiful 10-year-old daughter, and I have had a late term loss and early term losses. And so the maternal care rodeo has been a complicated one for me, and one that I feel very drawn to personally. And I sort of have always felt like I will get to that. Like I will get to figuring out how my life connects with that professionally. And then in the theater world, pre-COVID, I had been working on a piece about the closing of St. Vincent's Hospital. And that hospital was around the corner from where the theater I run is, Rattlestick. And it was ground zero during the AIDS epidemic. It was really a critical hospital, but critical hospital, obviously, for a very long time, from the mid 1800s. And so creating a theatrical piece in conversation with nurses, nursing professors, nurses and doctors came to see this show. It was a requiem for the hospital that had closed. And it was very powerful to work on. And it just felt like, oh, wait a second, this is a North Star for me. And then COVID happened. And then it just only, intensified that direction.
So it sounds like it was just this perfect set of circumstances that came together to reignite that fire that you'd had before, and as you're talking, I'm thinking, I'm like, I know we had some things in common because we both chose nursing later in life, but even with the parenting, I've been pregnant 6 times. I've had 2 early term losses, and I have 4 daughters. So I always was drawn to medicine in general, but then also to the maternal health side because I've done labor and delivery nursing, and then now working in women's health. So that's interesting. And I not living in New York, had not heard about St. Vincent's. I try not to do a lot of digging into the people that I'm going to interview because I love it to be organic, but I did want to know about the hospital. And I was fascinated by the story of it, and merely the fact that it was a hospital that had victims of the Titanic, that took care of some of those, and 9/11, and was like ground zero for AIDS epidemic East Coast. And I'm like, what a history. I mean, how immersed did you become in that story and in those doctors or nurses maybe that even had worked there when you were working on this production?
Very, very involved, very involved. And, also the intersectionality of religion as so the role that the nuns played in the hospital was also fascinating. And so the nuns that would come and the other folks from the religious order that would be engaged in what the piece was. I mean, the set was a series of different notes people wrote, with their
Oh,
stories. And so as the production unfolded week after week, there were more and more notes and more stories.
wow.
And there was just the loss of the hospital was such a huge ache for
Mhm.
the community. And to feel that loss was profound as well. So there were just so many aspects of it that people were, it was just very emotional. It was a
Mhm.
grieving process for the hospital,
Wow.
which was very powerful to just see just how integral a hospital is to the
Right.
lives of so many people in so many
Yeah,
ways.
you have people that are born there, people that died there. There's that connection that's there for families, and you're a part of that community that's there in the city. So that made it, I'm sure, even more personal for you. For me, when it came to deciding to go into nursing, I had always wanted to. There were moments when I made a decision. I'm like, do I want to do it? I was 36. I had this, I have that, I have the kid, I have this path. Did you have those moments where you're kind of on the precipice of this thing, but you're not really sure if you should jump or not?
Yeah, definitely. I started taking a couple of classes first.
Hmm.
That was helpful. I took everything online because my schedule is
Okay.
very busy through the
Hmm.
University of Rochester School of Nursing. And
Okay.
so I took a couple of classes, but then I wasn't interacting with other students. So I was like alone in my room studying at
Right.
midnight or 5 a.m. And then it was amazing to start volunteering. I just being around the women. So I've been in the labor and delivery
Oh,
triage
okay.
in and now I'm doing some surveying of
Hmm.
new moms for birth equity purposes,
Mm.
and I'm helping a NICU nurse manager. So it feels like being able to just see these vantage points helped make, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't like romanticizing it.
Exactly. Right.
Didn't even have
Yeah.
those questions.
Yeah, but that's the perfect segue for you because, sometimes it can all look really pretty. I know a lot of people when they, oh, you're a labor and delivery nurse, you work in happy nursing all the time. I'm like, yeah, it's happy when it's happy and it's sad when it's sad. But people don't really, necessarily see that. So it's great that you get that experience as well as this, before you actually get into the nursing part, because it kind of gives you a clearer vision of what you're going to do. So talk to me a little bit about your, fellow coworkers and family. So, you're doing this, you're awesome at directing, you have done all these different things when it comes to the theater. And now you say, well, I'm out of here and I'm going to go nurse. What was the general feel of family and friends? Because I know, sometimes that has a big impact on, what your decision can be.
Oh, you're really on target here. It's very interesting, different people's personalities. It reminds me of when I'm directing a play and people give me responses
Hmm.
and they're all seeing the same thing, but their responses are so different. And so it's very much a reflection of who they are.
Hmm.
They're seeing the strand that relates to them personally. It's almost like
Mm.
sometimes people are seeing 5 different plays because
Yes.
their vantage point is so strong. And so some people who have had 9 lives, really recognize that and understand that life can be very curvy.
Hmm.
And other people, theater, I would imagine like nursing, but I don't know yet, is
Hmm.
traible.
Yeah. Oh,
You got
yeah.
your clan.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's like, wait, you're leaving the tribe?
What do you mean we're not going to
And
be together?
And the thing is, I love the theater and I'm really
Mhm.
actually very interested to see if there's some way. I don't want to turn my back on it entirely. I think is there a way to look at life in an additive way as
Mhm.
opposed to, reductive? And
Mhm.
so how can theater engage in um nursing? I don't know. I do know that
Mhm.
a friend of mine at Mount Sinai, right when COVID was happening, he reached out to me because he is in administration there, and they wanted to do an immediate response with nurses and doctors, and people had written responses, and he wanted actors to read the responses and to
Oh.
broadcast it. I know a lot of artists who have played medical patients for nursing
Mhm.
schools and medical
Mhm.
schools. So there is, it's a very
Right.
theatrical thing. And so
Yeah.
I just don't want to turn my back on this entirely. So that is something for me I've just been thinking a lot about. But then I've had amazing response from people all over the world, or all over the country, people I don't know. I got this like amazing kind of love letter
Oh,
card
wonderful.
from Episcopal clergy in Des Moines, Iowa, like blessings to you and go forth.
Oh, that's
And so
amazing.
I just was like, I was very much struck by, that there's the collective cheer on of,
Mhm.
this is a moment that takes courage to leave everything you have done behind
Yes, it does.
and be a
Yeah.
student again.
Right. But if that calling kind of is there and that pull is there, it's almost like you're stepping from kind of a shadowy spot off stage into the spotlight that's been out there for you all the time. And now it's like it's a little scary. And I always say anything that you are meant to do is going to be a little scary at first. You're going to get that little feeling like, I don't really know if I can or if I should. But once you're there, then you realize, yes, this is what I should be doing. This is the thing. And like you say, there are nurses. I mean, on this program, we've had a nurse that's an author. We had a nurse that wrote a book about COVID, the entire year of COVID and what that was like. It was almost like a collection of her journals and her little notes to herself about the things that happened during COVID. We have interviewed a nurse who was a prize-winning photographer for over 20 plus years, and then decided to go into the units and now is photographing patients that were in COVID,
That's
and did
amazing.
a whole show. You'll have to look at his work, amazing work. So there are places that can intersect. And I think a big commonality you're going to find between nursing and the theater is that nursing is really at the personal level about the patient's story.
Mm.
And no one gets to know the story better than the nurse, because the physician's in and out, but the nurse is there 2, 3 shifts in a row taking care of this. The nurse is there in the morning when the labor starts, and then late into the night may decide, I'm going to stay over at the end of the shift because I'm vested in this story of this baby and this person now. So I think that's going to be a real beautiful experience for you. Now, nursing school, on the other hand, is a whole nother kind of story. So what have some challenges been for you in nursing school? Just because I want students that watch just to know that nursing school is challenging, and for sometimes not the reasons that they may think.
Yeah, I'm not the right person to ask about that quite yet, because I'm in the stage right before, because
Right.
I'm in prerequisite land. I'm in, like, I have a pig in my refrigerator that I'm dissecting for
Okay. So are you in the
anatomy.
biology and pathophysiology type place? Okay.
Yes, and
All right.
statistics and
Mhm.
microbiology
Oh,
and
yes.
science courses. I went to theater conservatory, so I haven't taken a science course since I was 17 years old.
Right.
So that's a big learning curve. But I actually feel like anything, I mean, it's beautiful. The body is beautiful.
Oh,
Understanding the body is beautiful.
it's
Um,
amazing. It is, yeah. And
yeah.
microbiology, I remember because I can't see, have the lens here, had 2 lenses on things. I cracked so many slides in microbiology. Thank goodness for my lab partner, because I'd be like, is it close? Is it there? And then he'd be like, oh my goodness. So you're right. That community of students does help, to have those there as well. And of course, with those that are in prereqs, because we do have some that are, it's not easy, but it is necessary. And so it's going to be fun at some point, just not initially there. But I remember in biology, just how fascinating it was, to learn that you can have a heart blockage, and on some levels, the heart will actually grow collateral circulation to go around it. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. So when you feel that it's cool and it's making the body beautiful, that's got to be a good point for you as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I was so happy to talk with you for so many different reasons, but I'm so interested and curious about maternal care from your perspective,
Mhm.
and just how you see the field growing and changing, and yeah, all of that.
One of the things I really, really love, because I did labor and delivery at a small hospital, and we had a lot of moms that were teen moms, and that was one of the reasons I went back to be a nurse practitioner, to kind of talk about reproductive health and birth control from the other side. But one of the things I do love is the fact that women are being encouraged to question, and to ask questions, because sometimes there's a plan of care that's kind of laid out, and we know that it might not be the best plan for that patient, or there may be questions the patient has. And, there was a time when it was like, this is what we're going to do, and you're going to lie in the bed, and you're going to do these things. And there was no questions. I love that we're encouraging patients to ask questions, because I think that they should. And I'm sure you'll find that even with working with the nurses, is that what'll happen sometimes is that the doctor will come in and say a few things, and the doctor will leave, and he'll ask if you have questions, and the patient doesn't say anything. And then as soon as the nurse comes in, they're like, oh, well, I want to ask this question. So going into nursing, that, our nurses are the educators, and they're going to be a lot of the ones who get asked those questions. Yes, we do have a lot of disparities when it comes to birth outcomes here in the United States, particularly for the Black and brown, mommies. We do. And there are a lot of factors, that contribute to that. Some is the education piece before the prenatal, education. Some women are waiting later to have children, and they need to make sure that it's okay to wait a little later, but you got to stay in good health, because if you have a lot of comorbidities or other health problems and you're older, you're going to be in for a complicated ride. And so having that education piece ahead of there, but the education doesn't just have to happen for the patient. It also has to happen for the providers, because we don't want to make assumptions. We don't want to make judgments, and we want to let patients know that this is shared decision making. So shared decision making means we sit down, we talk about what your ideal birth looks like, and I talk about what the healthy birth looks like and the things we can and can't do, and we come up with a plan that works for both of us. And so many times we don't feel that happens. I mean, when I had my babies, I had wonderful physicians. One of my physicians, I worked together after, because I wasn't a nurse when I had my babies, but I did have wonderful people there at the hospital that I knew. I felt like I was heard and understood, but my pregnancies were healthy pregnancies. And
Mhm.
so I didn't have, a lot of the issues and things that, some other moms may have. And so that experience, for each person is so individual. And I think that's what I tried to remember, and still try to remember, that, when we do deliveries or take care of patients, this may be my 100th pap smear. This may be well, it's probably 3,000 now. I've been doing them for a while, but I'm just saying this may be mine. But if this is this person's first,
Yeah,
then that's, this is the impression they're going to carry away about medicine, about nursing, about care. So I want to make sure they're okay. I want to make sure they're comfortable. So those kind of things. And I'm sure you're seeing a different side, a side of that as you go through care with volunteering, that you're seeing that.
totally. And that is all very resonant, everything you're saying. And in the survey that the hospital is doing, the New York Presbyterian, this Brooklyn Methodist Hospital is doing, on birth equity, the questions are, I could take part in decisions about my care. My decisions were respected. Like,
Wonderful.
this is this anonymous survey really trying to interrogate how much did the
Right.
patient feel comfortable
Hmm.
in being a partner and a collaborator in their own path of care. And that is
Yeah.
really, really interesting and very powerful.
Yes, it is really good. And now at the hospital where you're at, do you have physicians and midwives and doulas? What all providers do you have?
Yes. Yeah, all of them.
That's
Physicians,
great. Yeah.
midwives, doulas,
Yes.
nursing assistants, nurses. It's
Right.
just a robust network of care.
Right. And I
And
love that. I love the ability to be able to see that, because I think we intersect. And I think there was a time when we felt like we had to be separate. And, and you had the physicians and you had this midwives and you had this whole, and there was that fear of somebody encroaching on your space. But in reality, having all those partners together gives the patient so many different avenues to, find what they need in their birth experience. So being able to work together is so great. And we had one nurse midwife. And fortunately, in the part of the country that I'm in, there's not as much of an openness here in the South as far as midwifery care as there needs to be. There's making some headways in that, but I think you're up north, you're a little bit ahead of us with that. But in reality, if we go back to the days before hospitals, it was the midwives that did, the deliveries, the lay
Right.
midwives really here in the South that did the deliveries and did the things and for thousands of babies. And so I think seeing that integration and seeing those pieces come together, I think is really beautiful. I've thought about going back and being a doula, but I have too many things on my list right now. So maybe at some point I will. Maybe when I retire, I'll be a doula. I miss being a part of that experience. There's
Mm,
nothing quite like being in the room. And I had had babies before, so I knew that part of it. But being in the room and like we all go in and there's 5 of us, and then in a few minutes, there's 6. There's that peace and that
yeah.
stillness in that moment that is really a beautiful thing that I've enjoyed. And
Mhm.
what I enjoy even more is when I see moms that I've delivered the babies and I don't remember them. And I always tell my patients, if I don't remember you, that's probably good because I remember the people that really, really were critical. I remember the people that were really, really not the nice patients. But so if I don't remember you, it's probably good because you were probably great. But they'll come up and say, oh, you were with me and, you helped me get a bath after and those kind of things. So it was really lovely. And I'm sure you're discovering as well that not only do disparities and issues exist prenatally and with birth, but postpartum. And I
Yeah.
think we're discovering that you can't just take new mommies and babies and say, okay, it's been 3 days and you have this new person now, go home, read the paper, and we'll see you in 6 weeks. Not working.
Yeah.
So I think there's so much room for things that'll be there, in the future, for us. I'm optimistic about where we are now. So now tell me this, nursing has changed in the past 2 years. Um, in COVID, there has been a mass exodus of people that are leaving bedside, some leaving nurses. I mean, I've talked to nurses, even here on this show and on a podcast I had during COVID, that left and went to work in the school, or that left and went to drive a truck or work at Walmart or do something else because there was such a strain put on nursing itself. Did you have any hesitancy about going in post COVID?
No.
No.
More interest. More
Oh, so
interest.
yeah. Good.
And
Well, that's good.
especially with everything with Roe v. Wade and,
Yeah. Yeah.
just
Real
and all
volatile time.
the
Yeah.
equity disparities and just where as a middle-aged white woman, where can
Mm-hmm.
I be potentially helpful or of service
Right.
in some
Right.
way? And
Yeah.
so, I think I felt even more energized to go, wow, this is really a need. And I
It's a
want to roll up
time.
my sleeves to
Well,
be.
that's amazing. I'm so glad. I hope there are other people, other places, because I was like, oh, who's going to take care of
I think
everybody?
so. I mean, I actually think there's like a surge of people wanting to go into
That's
nursing.
wonderful. That
Yeah,
would
which
be,
I think is
that's
really
great.
powerful, really
That is
powerful.
good. So what's
Yeah.
your path forward as far as I know you're in prereqs now, and then what is it, the plan, as far as how long will it take? Because I know every school is a little bit different as far as your progression. Some have these accelerated programs where you're able to progress a little bit faster.
Yeah, so that's the plan, an accelerated program. So
Okay,
I'm applying to some schools, one that starts in June, some others that start in next fall. And
right.
and then it will be 15 months and sit for the NCLEX. And I just can't wait. I was just so excited. I just really look forward to my nursing volunteerships. I look forward to
Yes,
seeing who the women are and what
wonderful.
they're going through. And it's very, very exciting. So,
I know. Now, I don't know if you're a journaler or not. But
hmm,
if you are not, I would encourage you to keep a journal
okay.
because I feel that at some point, the blending of Danielle, the artistic director, and Danielle, the RN, is going to result in a story that's going to be something that all of us need to see.
Okay.
because I think it's very interesting to be able to see through the because you have the director's eye. You can't turn it off. Okay. Like I have the nurse's eye. I literally was at lunch somewhere with a friend the other day and I was looking at his arms like, oh my goodness, I could put an 18 gauge needle in that vein. I mean, because I'm sitting here thinking, I was like, wow, you had the most beautiful veins. I could really get some blood out of it because you have that nurse brain that's always on. And
Yeah.
so I know that you have this director's eye. So as you're going through, you're seeing these little vignettes play out each day, with your shifts and everything.
Yes.
So I encourage you to journal because I think that there's going to be a story that's going to develop outside of you, and there's going to be a story that's going to develop inside of you as well. And
Okay.
that it's going to show you and teach you things about yourself that you might not have even known was there. Because I go back to myself and I wish I didn't get my first degree at all till I was 36. I got married, took a segue, got divorced after all these things happened during nursing school. And I'm like, had I kept a journal, wouldn't it have been a story. There were probably some things in there that I forgot because what happens is it kind of, when you get, especially in the accelerated program, you kind of get into this tunnel because you have this goal and there are things that are going on out here. But if you can document some of that, you can look back and go, wow, what was, boy, I can't imagine that this day was, like this. Looking back at it, I think it's going to be something so interesting. And we're going to have you come back. That's provided Andy still has me doing the show so that you can
All
come
right.
back and tell us once you get pinned and do all the things. And I will
Okay.
tell you, as a non-traditional student, do all the things.
Okay.
Everything. Every time I graduated, my kids, we went to graduation. I graduated my last from the University of Cincinnati, and my kids went with me to graduation. And now I'm in my doctoral program here at Regis, and we are already planning. We're going to do a Massachusetts vacation in 2024 because it's
I love
important.
it.
And your daughter seeing you do these things is going to be so exciting. My kids have
Okay.
seen me cross the stage 3 times. And so being there for all the things is going to be so inviting. And then also as a student, you're going to have that moment. You're going to have that moment when you're going to be taking care of a patient or doing something, and you're going to be like, okay, I just cannot do this. I mean, this was 15 years ago, and I had a patient, bless his heart, passed away, but that had some really serious issues going on, had decubitus ulcers and a trach and a cat, all the things. And I had taken care of him for a day, and I just thought to myself, I just can't do it today. So when
Mhm.
that moment comes, you're going to have that friend or that person, or you're going to, and I'll send you my phone number, and you're going to text and be like, I just think today I have to quit. I don't think I can do it. And you need that person that's going to say, you can do it. This is just today. Move on. Next patient. You're going to get through it. And also, there's going to be a class. For me, it was critical care. In critical care, I was like, we are on a bus and we are going somewhere, but I don't even know where we're going. I don't know why I'm on the bus. What all these things, these numbers are just not. And I was meeting with my professor every week. And I did pass, but I'm telling you, there were moments when I thought I wasn't going to make it. And I'm an A student generally, but I just thought I wasn't going to make it. And so I was grateful for that. And for statistics, I was in the tutors. There were 2 young gentlemen that had just graduated that were tutors, and every Sunday, me and David and Alan were sitting down, and I got an A in statistics strictly because of them, because I was like, I have no clue. I'm not a math person. I don't
Right.
really even know this, but it was really great. So I'm so excited for you, and you will not regret it. You won't regret it. I mean, I made a choice at 36, and there were some that said, "Oh, you're going back to school. You have these kids," and I'm like, but all the time, I do not regret it because I love what I do. I love being able to talk to people, to hear their stories, to help people, to educate young people. So I think you're going to have an amazing journey, and I'm so
Thank
excited that you
you.
made this
Thank
choice
you.
to do this, and so excited that we got to find you, and got to talk to you so we can know what that's like. So for anybody that's watching that's in nursing school, you can do it. And also, it doesn't matter about the age. I've heard people say, I always want to be a nurse, but I'm 45. I'm like, and next year you're going to be 46. Is it going to be as a nurse or is it not going to be?
Right.
Because, it doesn't really matter, if it's something you want to do. So I'm so
Wow.
happy for you. And so
What a
glad we
gift
got
to talk to you. Thank
yeah,
you.
I feel the same way. I feel like it's been a gift. So we'll definitely keep in touch. And so if you need somebody, now look, I can't tell you that I remember all the bones, but I do remember the majority of them. The summer that I did did biology in a summer semester. So it was like a 10-week course, but it was 15 weeks of content. So girl, I was at the stoplight with flashcards doing like this
Oh
on the
my
way to work,
gosh.
trying to figure, to remember all the things. But we didn't have a pig, we had cats. And the
Uh-huh.
cats were like, oh my goodness, I did not relish going in there with the cats, but I did learn all the locations. I
Wow.
learned how to find the drop of blood and trace it through the heart valves and all those
Mhm.
things.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they do come in handy, and it's really kind of fascinating. It's really kind of fascinating. So enjoy it, be fascinated, be lifted, do all the things, and go see plays when you
Mhm.
have a free time so that you can be still having your time with the theater, because you need to nourish that part of your soul, because it's going to be there for a reason, for the great story that Daniela is going to direct for us. Daniella Topol, RN, will direct for us. Okay. So this has been really wonderful, and I appreciate having you with me.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful.